Hey everybody, welcome to the Blue Collar Angst podcast, where we dive deep into the realm of any and really everything blue collar. We're going to take a look at a wide range of trades and careers that range from welders and electricians to police officers and everything in between. The guests we bring on the show, the listeners, really essentially you, are the fuel that keep this whole thing going. With that being said, please enjoy, and as always, like, subscribe, follow, do whatever it is that you do to stay up to date so that you don't miss a thing. Thanks. Enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Blue Collar Angst. Really excited for this week's episode. We have David Estrada with us out of Southern California, Riverside County. His company is Welder Made Headbands, and I have a set of them. I've handed out a set of them to a few friends at work. They are just a really cool product. I met Dave on Instagram, and he's just a phenomenal guy. Really cool story. He's an actual welder too, so he's not some random guy that started making headbands. He's a real welder. He's done it for over 20 years. He's made a career out of it. Union man, and really excited. But with that being said, how are you doing, David?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you.
Well, man, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? Tell them a little bit about growing up in California, and let's kind of start there.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been welding certified as certified welder since 1999. My first job was up in Northern California in the Bay Area. It was on the Bay Bridge. A bunch of full pens, 1-inch stiffeners onto a 4-inch base plate. And before that, I had been practicing just about every day of the week. After work, I would drive about 107 miles from where I was working at to get to the school that they had torch tables there. And so I'd get all my metal prepped and start getting ready for the following days. Cutting, beveling, and fit up on the next day. And then just start welding in position 3G, 4G, getting ready for my tests. And that was back in 99, and I'm still welding. Growing up here in Southern California, it's in my county, it was amazing. We grew up out here in the valley, and we were all about dirt bikes and riding bikes in the hills, building dirt bike tracks, and it was great. We had a lot of land. It wasn't too crowded, and it was always a blast. My brother and I, and that's how it was growing up here in this area.
That's cool, man. It's gotten a lot busier now, huh? 20-something years later.
Oh, yeah. 20-something years later, all the land where we used to hang out and ride bikes and dirt bikes, it's all being developed. Tract homes and plazas and whatnot. It's definitely a lot different than when it was 20 plus years ago.
I don't want to lose track of the Bay Bridge story. I talked with David on the phone a few times now. We talked about that story, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I think another unique part about your life is your upbringing. I talked to you a little bit about your dad and his story. Maybe share that with the listeners on how that kind of shaped you, and share a little bit about your dad.
My dad was and still is everything that a struggling young man needed to hear to believe in himself, to make the right decisions, in general, to learn. He had a way of talking to me that was super simple. He wouldn't say much, and it would make sense. I wasn't doing too well in high school, and at that time he was pretty much retired. But he says, "Well, if you're not going to continue in school, you're going to go to work." And so he literally handed me a pick and shovel, and I started digging trenches for retaining walls. And I liked it. I liked being with him. We would talk and have a great time. And when it was lunchtime, we didn't mess around. We'd go for the good hamburgers, or a big burrito or something. And he'd always say, do something for yourself. There's nothing like being your own boss. And if it doesn't matter what you do, you always got to do something for yourself. And so we grew up like that, thinking it was better to be your own boss, think about a product or a company or business. And we grew up with construction all around us. My dad would build amazing landscapes, uh, concrete patios, room additions, and all that stuff. And we were surprised at how we'd see nothing and then all of a sudden something. But what I remember the most was the reaction of his clients and the customers of how much they loved his work. And he would get in our city where we grew up, he would get a whole street of work from word of mouth, from one satisfied customer to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. It turned in from the 1960s until the early 90s of work in town just from word of mouth. And that was something that still is important to me because he was always working and he was able to take care of my family, which were seven plus grandkids, my nephews, and he did it with his hands. And he would his inspiration was he just liked the fact that nobody could tell him or nobody could say you have to stay, because if there was some sort of family emergency or whatnot, he would say to the customers, I need to go. And there wasn't much explanation. They said, no problem. And he would go. And he loved that. And we found that was important for ourselves too. So, and there was so much more things that he taught us, my whole family, including my cousins, my brothers, sisters. Uh, he was an inspiration for us all, just for his philosophy on that. And it's part of my brand now. It's the eagle, even though it's a powerful national symbol. It's a powerful symbol worldwide. The eagle. It was my dad's tattoo that he had on his right arm, and one of my best memories is he'd take us to the beach and we'd be splashing and playing around, but he'd be always taking care of us. He'd always have us within sight, and the eagle is always there. And so always smiling, always having a good time, and always adventurous. That was him.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
You hear stories, of like sometimes the old school blue collar guys, back in the day that it was just rough and they'd come home and maybe not be the best dad. But it's cool to hear stories like that because, your dad providing for 7 kids, right? And the grandkids and still taking time to take you guys to the beach and love you guys even today, right? And you know this, I seen your posts on Instagram, man. And I feel the same way as a dad now. That's what it's all about. I think it's a special thing too. We talked a little on the phone last night, kind of his start into concrete work, working in La Jolla and things like that. You want to talk a little bit about that? I think his start story is so unique. That's why I want you to kind of talk about that.
Yeah, he would talk to us about, for example, I would ask him, well, what would people earn at that time? And he says it was about $40 a week. And he would say, I would go and do a really nice little sidewalk for a customer or a little brick planter, and they would love it. And he would charge, $150, $300. And so it was much more than what normal wages were at that time. But it started even before that. Uh, the story that I remember the most is him learning how to think ahead of just just not being content with what was there at that time. Like for instance, when they came from Mexico to Baja California, uh, he used to work for a man selling little piggy banks, and he saved up enough to buy a broken mold. He repaired it and started making his own piggy banks. And it was inspirational. Which then he was probably about 13, 14 years old, but as a teenager, getting into concrete and brick masonry, that was neat because he'd have an eye. He'd read the terrain, and I'm sure that he'd get some sort of sense from the potential client. But all he would do is smile, and he'd walk over to where he had to be. He'd stick his heel in the ground and start drawing out lines with his heel. And then they'd walk back and they'd all stand together. My dad would be smiling, and the clients would just be looking like this. And that's what I want. And he would physically make that brick planter sidewalk appear. And that was at the beginning. So that was in La Jolla. And we never really had a chance to go back and look at some of the work that he might have done back then, and that might still exist. But here in our town where we grew up, it's all around us. And he would point out, I was making that wall when your oldest sister was born. I was here when that happened. And it was all kind of relative to my sisters and my brothers and I, like a timeline. He'd always refer to it like that. And it's still neat. It's still neat to see it.
Yeah. It's funny. You told that story yesterday to me on the phone, and you were saying when he bought the concrete business, like, yeah, I bought this business from so-and-so. And when people say that, generally you think like it's an established thing. And
Yeah.
you told me that he always would say, yeah, I got a shovel and a wheelbarrow and an old cement mixer. That was the business.
Yeah.
And it's just cool, man. It's like that hustler mentality. First generation immigrant, right? He was the first person to come to America from Mexico.
Yeah. Well, the only people that from our family that were here at that time, I think, was my grandfather's friends. So it was only like hearsay for them to come from all the way from Mexico to Tijuana and then into San Diego. But that led to another story that he would share with us too. But yeah, essentially that's how it was. They were our aunts and my dad and my aunts and uncles that were first to come here, and then continue with all of us.
That's so unique too. Gary Vaynerchuk, a lot of people have different opinions on him. Gary V on social media, what he's known by, but he always talks about how being an immigrant, you're ahead of the game, right? Because like your dad knew what it was like to be in Mexico and not have much. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I know a lot of people travel to Mexico now from the United States. Like I've been to Cancun before, and it's like you go to these resort towns sometimes, and you're like, oh, this is really nice. But then when you really get outside, you venture out into the country, man. Like it's sad to see some of the conditions. Not all of it, but there's definitely, I guess I wouldn't say lack of resources, but it's just a different type of life. I feel like some of the opportunities, which is why I'm so grateful for the United States too, is, you can be anything that you want to be. There's this guy going around right now. I forget his name. Joe Rogan shared about it too. He sings that country song, The Rich Men of North Richmond. And he's just out in the woods, and he like went viral overnight this last week. And he was talking, I saw like a Facebook Live thing, and he was just like, dude, that's what's so great about this country is you can be anything you want, there's no boundaries. And even your dad coming to California, Southern Cali, and making something of himself, making $300 in a week when $40 was the average. Like that's inspiring,
Yeah,
and it still happens to this day.
Oh, definitely. And I agree 100%. And that's something that I myself, my wife and I talk about that a lot with our own two kids. I say it's not by coincidence that people want to come to our country. It's because there's opportunity in here. And so we got to be grateful that we're in this opportunity, that we got this great opportunity, this great country. Because like I've told them, it's not because like a country like Mexico, like you said, you go out of the town, out of the resort, and it's different. It's just it's it's not just a lack of resources, but it's a lack of ideas. There in our culture, a lot of times it's like it's not it's not pushed like go and do something. It's just try to survive or try to find something, right? But when you come here, uh, it's different because if you decide, and it's all about decisions, if you decide you want to make a living, if you want to get up and going with what you have, and it just may be that all you have is a shovel, you can go door to door and ask for for something in exchange for digging a hole. You could become the greatest hole digger off of one street. And I tell to my kids that that's the opportunity we have here. If you got a shovel, ask them if you can dig a hole. Maybe they want to plant some trees, and maybe you could charge them $3 a hole. And it's the sky's the limit. Same
Yeah.
thing if you see a lemon tree. It's a lemon tree, but what can be made of that lemon tree? You might come up with the most perfect recipe for lemonade, although it exists already. It might be your touch and your combination of ingredients that makes your lemonade a nationwide hit. So I try to encourage those thoughts and ideas into my kids because it's possible here still in our great country. It's not like it's not it may not be possible in other countries. You don't see people like Jim Rohn used to say. I like to quote Jim Rohn because he says you don't see people trying to flock to Poland because of opportunity. It's here.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. And I think what's interesting about that, I had a conversation with my brother-in-law. He works full time, just like us, right? And he has a business on the side like us. And that's how a lot of people start, man.
Yeah,
And I even think about my childhood, like my mom, starting a real estate business. Some people looked at that sometimes and like, oh man, like that must be nice. Or like Welder Made Headbands, must be nice to have this established thing. And it's like, dude, you had to work your ass off for it. And it's a
yeah,
lot of work outside of. It's not just like a 8 to 5 type thing.
no,
It's you get home, it's Saturdays, it's sacrifices, just like your dad did, man. But
yeah,
always do more. I love that. It's such a simple little thing that I think this newer generation coming out of high school kind of misses sometimes, to always do more. But
right,
talking with Hunter Wilson, Texas Pipeliner 35, he brought that up. Some of the students that did a little bit more in high school, and they're coming out of high school not with that victim mentality, but they're like they have an associate's degree or they have their welding certs, and or having a plan even, man. Just it's just a special thing to just always be thinking ahead, right? Not getting
right.
caught up in the bull crap or the minutia of the minute, but you're thinking ahead and moving forward. So, and yeah, you're right. It's a special thing we have in our country for sure. And
Yeah,
for guys like us, I think when you see people that don't really realize that, or when you talk to people that do, it's a special connection.
definitely. It's like you said, having a plan is what's the difference because we see people. Well, over here in California, it's gotten bad, and we've heard stories about how it is in Seattle of like the homeless situation. But what I say, what I say to my kids is like, it's just people that have the wrong plan, you know, and you've got to have a plan. Sometimes I'll get a message saying, I really want to do the type of welding that you do, and how do I get started? And it seems like it's a simple answer, but what I recommend is always do some research on the type of welding you think you might be interested. And if you can find out a way how to start and actually try it, and if that's something you like, then pursue it because somebody might enroll or get started in this whole thing and invest a lot of time and money, and they might not like it. There's a lot more in the trades that is available, like fitting or using a torch or layout. It's all necessary. Starting off with a plan, though, it's simple, and I've I've recommended that to a few people that I've been able to talk with. It's easy as having a notebook. Just it's just a notebook, and you write it down. It could be a lifesaver, but at least you can always reflect back on what you may have written down and continue with that. And it's not expensive. Some people say, "Well, I use my phone for that," but I think there's something more special about just actually picking it up and writing it, and, and having that plan down on paper or goals.
Huge. It's huge, man. I got the same thing. And yeah, there's something special. I mean, sometimes, if you don't hit a plan or a goal that you write down, you look at that goal. If it's on your phone, it's just a simple text or whatever.
Yeah,
There's something more meaningful when you see your own handwriting and you look at it. Like when I don't hit a goal and I see that and it gets at me, and I'm like, gosh, because there's no excuse because that was you that wrote that down on paper.
exactly. Yeah, and it's something important too. It's a benefit because like a book, people took the time to put a book together out of pages written down or a bunch of accumulated notes. But if you invest that into yourself, where you have written down, like I tell people, and I tell this to many people who I consider serious about the trade, I've always said, have that notebook in your truck or your car, wherever it is after work, and just write down a sentence or two of what you did today or what might have stuck in your head because it's important. It could be 2 or 3 years later where the same situation arises and you remember that you wrote something down and you could save your potential employer or yourself or your crew a bunch of headache. So instantly you'll be looked upon as a thinker and a problem solver, and that could lead to a raise, or that could lead you to the next position from a hand into a supervisor or whatnot. It's worked personally in my own life. Um, I wish I could be more disciplined like that, but for what I do now, it served me well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny too. I think about it just this last week. I was trying to edit, and my first month into the podcast, I wrote a few notes down and I tucked them away. And then I was like, man, I knew I'd come into this before, right? And I couldn't remember the specifics. And I pulled it up and pulled the paper out. And it saved me, honestly, probably a couple hours of trying to research it. And that time is money, right?
Yeah.
Especially in
Yes,
the trades. You know, do it right, do it once. I think one thing I wanted to add too to what you were saying, man, with this have a plan and write things down. Once you do that and you execute and you start doing it, you're going to it's going to be challenging, right? Especially at first when you're learning something new. And just because something's challenging, especially to maybe the youth of today listening, just because something's challenging doesn't mean maybe I should stop. Like if you're feeling some resistance, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. That just means you got to put a little bit more effort into that task so that you can master it. And it takes time, just like you with making headbands with welding, just like with your dad, just like with anybody, it takes time. Even a master can still be taught something, right?
oh,
I think it's a
definitely.
special thing to remember.
Yeah, I would say to anybody listening would be ask for a challenge or ask for challenge because um, it's what's it's going to separate them from this the normal everyday routine or the normal comfortable uh, person in the trade, whether they're welding or whether they're just in carpentry. If you get asked for a challenge and you're not comfortable with it and you get through it, that's gonna make that's gonna make the person who asked you to do it realize you're someone that's you can be counted on. And it's something that I've had to do since the very beginning. Uh, I would get sent to a job at 20 something years old and saying, "Go, go, go! They're waiting for you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, the tools are in the back of the truck. Just go. They're waiting for you." Well, I'd have to psych myself out on the way there, thinking, "Okay, he asked me because I guess he sees something in me." And I get there and I go look in the back of the truck and I'm looking at what's there, which isn't much. Um, but at that age, I was able to put the work together, get jobs done, and make a great name for myself at that age because people would see me, the employers or the people who would call out for the welder would say, "That's the welder?" And they see me walking up and I go, "Yeah, I'm the welder." "Okay, well, let's see what you got." And then I would just teach them a lesson and go full throttle and walk away saying thank you and then just go home. I always wanted to get home. And I even still I want to get there, get the job done as quickly and smoothly as possible because the goal for all of us is get home safe and rest up and do it again, the following day.
Yeah. This is a perfect time, I think. One of my favorite stories that from you that I've shared with a few of my friends and family, because I find it inspiring, man. And I think it's a really good look into how a lot of people feel starting out into the trades or starting something new. It's just something that it stuck out to me. You know, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, working on the Bay Bridge. Kind of talk us through that, and how old you were and your mentality. Talk about that Bay Bridge story because that's something that every time I see a text come through from you, it's just always in the back of my mind. I think about that. So maybe share a little bit about the Bay Bridge experience for you.
Well, at that time, I was, like I said, I grew up here in a small town, Riverside County, and working with my dad, I didn't want to let him down. And I think he expected me to continue with masonry and concrete. And my younger brother says, "Well, I'm going to learn how to weld." And I said, "Okay." And he was kind of like saying, "Maybe you should too." So I said, "All right, well, let's give it a shot." So we were both going at it, we're practicing. And uh, after 4 months of this intense practicing, I would carry around these test plates in the back of my little pickup, and I'd set them up. And the guy who was teaching me, he would say, "Okay, let's see what you got." So I'd fit it all up, weld it all out, and he says, "You're ready. You're ready to test." All right, good. So now he goes, "Okay, we're going to go to Oakland, and you're going to test on the job site." And I was thinking, okay, Oakland, that's not too far, just past LA, right? No, it's hours away, And so we go, and instantly it's like a shell shock kind of thing because like I'm used to the valley, and the next thing you know, I'm standing on the pier of the Bay Bridge, and these big container ships just flowing by. I'm looking up at the giant bridge. They're telling us, "Don't take your hard hat off because if something falls from the bridge, it can make a nice little hole in your head." And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? And so the first couple of days was helping the welders out that were there. So we'd help them string out, we'd help them get set up, and we were just John on the spot, just being ready for whatever they needed. They brought armor tail out. I tested 3G and 4G on the pier out there, and they took the samples. They took them to go get tested, and I was feeling homesick. Honestly, I was like, man, I was really nervous about being out there. And the results came back in. I remember the guy walking and says, and I was kind of hoping it didn't pass, to be honest with you, because I was, like I said, I was homesick. But they said, "Okay, your tests are good. Here's your certifications. Here's your paperwork. Okay, you're going to go up the column, go up the ladder, and you're going to be up there and then down in the hole." And I, I had already been up there, but I looked down in there, and now that it's my turn to go down there, I felt like I was going to be sick because of what was expected or what I had to do. And so, yeah, we went down there. We had a fresh air system, a flip lens, and like I said, we're doing full pins in the hole. And one after the other, I was executing the welds. Weld one side, back out the other, fill it up, clean it all up, have the inspector come in. uh, test, visually inspect everything, and then UT would come in a couple days. So it turned out to be really nerve wracking at first, like unbelievably nerve wracking to the point where now it's okay. Which one's next? Let's go and handle it. So we'd get up in there and weld it out, and then get ready to go. And that went on all summer of '99. We'd work all through the week, and Friday we'd just jump in the truck, start shifting gears, and heading back south to Southern California. And that's how it was for all that time. It was something that I never forget. You know.
What a big moment too for your life, man. Like, you know, being homesick, being honest about that too. So
Yeah.
that's a normal way that a lot of people feel, saying, man, maybe I hope I don't pass this test because then I get to go home. Like
Yeah.
that's a real feeling, man. And just to be able to embrace that and share that with me and with this audience, I really appreciate it. You shared something really cool too that I don't want to leave out on one of our phone calls. You talked about being down in the hole and some of the different writings, people marking their names and stuff. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, inside those columns, it looks like a bunch of cells, kind of like the little walkways are. It's kind of like a submarine, I guess I would say. We walk through, and it's super dark. There's no lighting, and it's damp. And we'd have a little flashlights, and I'd look around, and I'd see people that would write their names like such and such in 1960 something, and so such and such and this and that. So at that time, my wife, we were dating back then, and so of course I put my name right there, put David and then on 1999, and I could go right back to it. I could tell exactly where I wrote it at, and if they hadn't blurred it out, but assuming it should still be there because I saw some that were from the 60s and whatnot. And you see that bridge in a lot of movies. I see it, and it instantly reminds me of being in that hole. I was literally at the bottom of the columns, and sometimes the lights would go out, and it was so pitch black, and it was nerve wracking. It was like I'm in a hole like this. It's probably I would probably say it's about the size of a single cab pickup truck, not smaller. And so I was kind of weaved in between the base plate and the stiffeners, and then the lights would go out. And the only light that I had was I had a Casio G-Shock, and so I'd hit that little blue indigo light, and it would illuminate just enough where I could see, you know. But the sounds, I'd have to calm myself down because I'm thinking I'm in this hole at the bottom of the bridge, and it's California, and it's earthquakes, and it's this and it's that, and try not to panic. And I would do whatever it would take to calm down. Literally, being in a youth group at the church, and I was thinking about the songs, and I would try to just thinking about the song, and you couldn't just take your respirator off the fresh air system and walk up out of the hole. Um, that was just at the first few days, because after this problem was occurring, we'd tell them, hey, we need somebody above us. There has to be somebody above us all the time to help us out if we need something. So after we talked about that, it was handled where then we had somebody right above us on the next platform above us. So if the lights would go on, they would go and flip the breaker or replug the plug or whatever we needed.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny. You're all the way down there in this small hole. It's pitch black. You don't want to be listening to Slayer, Angel of
No,
Death at that moment, huh?
definitely not. It was
Excellent.
no, it was yeah. I think I
That's
remember.
unique, dude.
Yeah, it was definitely an experience to say the least. Even the ride from the barge from the dock from Oakland to the bridge. It was a half an hour ride, and all the company guys, everybody was loading up the barge with tools and all the supplies. And the barge would go and park. And the low rumbling sound, and it park and tie it off real quick, and then people blowing on the rope and all the tools, and climbing up the side. It was it was it was one of the most spectacular jobs that I've ever done. You know, there's quite a few. I've been able to work on a couple of the major bridges up in the Bay Area, like the San Rafael Toll Bridge, the approach to the Golden Gate, and it's 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 the fact that you're on something that's like super important. Like there's hundreds of people that are traveling through here, and your work matters. There's no ifs or buts about it. You have to produce quality work. You have to stick to everything to produce this, you know. But when it's all said and done and you stand back and you're like, wow, you know, I did something there. That's the amazing part about it.
There's lots of reels about that too, you know, like blue collar dads when they see a project that they work on. But that's that pride, man. You know, that's the pride that makes the trade so special. You know, being able to work on stuff like that, that's a legacy, you
Yeah.
know, and something not everybody gets to do. Let's talk a little bit about, I guess, going through your career, starting your career like that in welding. How cool is that? You know, once in a lifetime opportunities, setting the bar pretty high. So I guess kind of walk us through still welding and then kind of coming into realizing, hey, there's a need for like headbands in these hard hats and these weld hoods. I mean, you've been doing it for a while now, since 2014. I feel like you've perfected it. My personal opinion. I mean, you know, I've worn hats or hoods, and you just feel sometimes like, man, this is there a way to make this better? Because this sucks, you know. And I've seen guys sweating in the summer trying to throw, you know, cut towels or paper towels in their hat to try to stop the sweating. But yeah, talk a little bit about that, man. Like morphing from welding to doing more and starting Welder Made Headbands.
Yeah, that that in itself is it's a whole there's a whole there's a whole story to it because it doesn't just happen. You know what I mean? You couldn't of course there's headbands that already exist, but how many of those headbands may have actually come from a person that was in the field and actually work and actually sweat and actually wearing the welding hood or hard hat? And for me, well, I've always been really crafty. And you know, I like to draw. I would draw designs out for my dad with landscape design. In high school, you know, I used to just make make these things. If I thought I could make it better, I would. Same with cooking. You know, I like to cook here at home, and if I think this might taste better, I'll try it and I'll add it. But with the headbands, you know, it's you when you're a dad or regardless. But me being a dad, you know, I couldn't just go and buy full hides. You know, I wanted something nice, and I've always really liked uh, the 850 welding gloves made by Tillman, or the 750s. I'm sorry, elk skin. And so I said, man, I'd like to make something like this out of a headband. So I would look around, and I was an eBay guy. So I started off by buying those pounds of scrap leather, and I would just keep some little pieces. I would cut them out with some sharp scissors that I had. I would cut out squares and rectangles and keep them in the console of my truck. And whenever I needed to, you know, I'd take off my hood, I'd put my hard hat, and I'd rip out the other piece, and I'd just put another piece of leather in there. And at that time I was just super gluing it because that's what I had in my truck. And so that's what I ran, you know. And then I started doing the same thing for the backside. I would just cut it out and put it in there. Uh, you know, one time I was with my brother, and he says, "Hey, did you get any black leather yet?" And I go, "Yeah, I did." So I said, "Give me your hard hat." And we were sitting in traffic on the 710 freeway out here in Long Beach, and I put in some basic leather headbands for him in his hard hat while we were in traffic. And so he's like, "Oh, cool, black headbands. Nobody has those." And we put the hood in the back of the truck, you know. But I always wanted to make something better because I really felt I could, and I had experiment with different types of padding, um, different types of leather. But it was around 2019 where I started getting better with it, where I started putting the snaps and the padding. And it was all just stuff that I had here at home. You know what I mean? It would take me just about a full hour to complete one set for a hard hat, for the fiber metal hard hat. And I mean, I would wake up early before work and I'd get it and cut it. And I had this little old hammer and a little anvil for setting the snaps and pap, pap, pap. And I tried to be quiet. My kids were all saying, Dad, you're making too much noise. And so, it would take me an hour to get the padding in there. I was experimenting with different types of adhesives. And, I'd get a few put together and I'd hand them out to the fellas at work. And they're like, at first it's like, what is this? And I go, it's for a hard hat. It's a headband. Oh, cool. And so I was handing them out and they liked them. I'd come back and they'd say, hey man, you got to do a website or something. These are really nice. And so, that started getting me thinking like, hey, what if I try it? I was pretty good at eBay. And so, yeah, I started putting up listings on eBay and it was under the name Fiber Metal Hard Hat Headbands. And, I started selling them and at the end of, 2019, some of my, original colors, were the golden color and I think some browns and they had yellow padding at that time. And, I'd always carry some in the truck at work. And whenever I had a chance, I'd say, hey, you might want some of these headbands. Check them out. So one of the first transactions that I made at work was for a guy that lived nearby, and it was for $10 in a bag of grapefruit. And that was my first transaction. It was right before COVID, and so everybody's trying to get stock up on vitamin C and trying to stay healthy. And I had never to this day tasted a better ruby red grapefruit than from his house, and we still talk. But yeah, that was my first transaction there at work. And then it just kept evolving. I'd come home from work and try to get at least 2 or 3 sets put up or built, put them aside. And I think at that time, I'd use a little post-it. My wife would write what hard hat it was for and put a post-it on it. And then I'd get a rubber band and wrap it and would put it in a Ziploc bag and I would carry that in my work truck. And I went from that to using the plastic baggies because the rubber band would leave a squeeze mark on the headband. So that stopped. And
Nice.
it just kept getting growing and growing, and to the point where, we fire up an Instagram, and I had never had anything social media like that other than eBay. I had a LinkedIn account for a very short while, but didn't do nothing with that. But yeah, Instagram, and I started reaching out to welders and asked if they would like to wear something like this. And so yeah, it started growing like that. Um, and it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling because it wasn't like I was purposely trying to start out a brand or build a product or go worldwide with something. It was just something that I needed, and what was available just wasn't cutting it. And I still say it, what's available at stores right now, it just doesn't cut it. More and more they think about putting something out there for temporarily so it might last you a week, but they want you to go back there and keep buying it. And it might be at a low price, but after 2 weeks, I know because I've used them, after 2 weeks, they smell horrible or it's just gross.
Yeah.
And when I've seen people come back to me and they've had their same hard hat headband for more than a year, it's amazing. They said, it still works and this still works fine, but I want a new one. And so I know it's something special.
Dude, it's funny, and you're so right. Like, think of I think it's Honeywell that they make or 3M. They make the blue. It's kind of like a cloth material that you could put in the front of your hard hat. Dude, that's why they sell them in like packs of 10 because they know in 2 weeks, in a week, in the summer maybe, you're sweating a lot. It's gonna smell like death, like you said, and they're terrible, And
Yeah.
sometimes you're like, dude, do I need a new hard hat? Like if you don't change it out quick enough. And
you wouldn't believe the things that I've come across as far as a so-called headband or sweatband. in hard hats. It's just it's it's kind of disgusting, but it tells me the necessity for it. And I call what I make headbands because there's always a controversy. Well, leather doesn't absorb sweat or this and that. And well, yeah, but we're in a trade where there's fire and sparks, and cloth isn't going to cut it up here. It's just not. And so I still recommend, though, for whoever wears my products, the leather headbands. I still say, it's going to feel even better if you wear your bandana underneath or your welder's cap. It's just because that's what's going to absorb the most of the sweat. But the comfort's going to come from the leather, the premium leather, and the padding. And
Yeah.
it's when I put my first complete set together, Dave, and I put it on, and I was like, I myself thought like whoa, and I called my wife over, check this out. My son and my daughter and all of us were putting the hard hat on, and it was like, wow, that's neat, and the color is so cool, and it's an amazing feeling. And even still, I'm humbled, but I'm super grateful to see and hear all these people say that, like, it's amazing, or uh anything they say. It's I read it and I see it, and I want the people to know that thank you for those reviews, or thank you for sharing a kind word when you're sitting there having lunch, or if you're in a safety meeting, or you're about to take a test, or if somebody notices, hey, what's on your welding hood, and they say, oh, this headband. Thank you for whatever conversation comes up that says, this guy, he's an actual welder. That's a huge compliment, because I am. I am a welder, and I'll always be ready to get hot. I can put my hood on and help somebody weld, fit, lay out, use a torch, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that, and I'm proud to be somebody who brings a real necessity into the marketplace as a blue collar tradesman. Because sadly, a lot of people are not, and a lot of people are in it for money, and it's just a sad thing. Although, yeah, it is a country where it's allowed. It's allowed to be, inventive or creative, but it doesn't mean take all the time. It doesn't mean take. So,
I was going to say, it kind of makes me think like it's special too, right? Like it's not all about just take in a capitalistic society, right?
right.
Even though it's easy for some people to get like that or make it all about the money. I think that's what makes your brand stand out to me personally. I mean, you're an actual welder. You've been doing it a long time. You saw a need for something to change, and then on top of that, man, like it's not. It's all. I see companies all the time that they're all about, like, say, made in the USA, right? They're all about, yeah, we're made in the USA, this. And then the outsourcing that happens, or they'll say that they're here to support the local workers, in the United States. And then you're outsourcing, like a bigger company, for example, to go get cheaper things from China, uh, Taiwan, wherever it may be. But it's like, that's what's cool about you is keeping it genuine, keeping it real, and keeping it, made here in the United States.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could take your invention and go send it to some factory in China or Taiwan or Vietnam, wherever, where it's like really popular to do this, and they could mass produce these, but there's not going to be that final touch, right? And there's not going to be that. I think it just underscores the whole purpose of a product, in my opinion, when I see companies that do that.
Oh yeah, and I believe like, okay, and marketing. If I was to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on marketing, yeah, I might see a huge growth in numbers or sales. But I remember a simple phrase that somebody used to tell us, don't want what you don't want. Because right now at this point, I'm still trying to catch up. I never want to have I never want to put out a product where it doesn't serve somebody. I wanted to serve that person who needs it. I wanted to work hard for them when they really need it, when they need it the most. I mean, every headband out there that has the eagle on it, it literally came from my hands. I mean, I put it together. It wasn't a laser. It wasn't a die cut. It wasn't a press. It wasn't a assembly line. It was made here in my home. You know what I mean? And there's attention that I put into it. I'm super picky, and I know that. But if I get to, well, now it's more than, I've made more than 1,000. It's more than 2,000 pieces that are out there that I've made. It's probably closer to 5,000 or more. But then all left my home here in Riverside County. It wasn't anywhere else. And I want people to realize, like I said, that's special. It is. It is, because if I see pictures, or I come back through my notebook and I'll see an order placed, I can still remember making it a lot of times. You know what I mean? Or a thank you, and a card, or some stickers that people sent. Um, it's just an incredibly amazing feeling, and I'm grateful to God, because it's a God given gift. It's a talent. I didn't read a book for this. I didn't I didn't take I didn't take somebody else's product and trace it and copy it and then say I did it. It came one version of it to the next version to the next version to what you're seeing now. And it's going to still get better. I'll figure out a way where I can make something incredibly nice, and of course I'd like to make it where it's the right price. And what I mean by the right price, I mean where it's not going to be like, are you kidding me? It's not a Gucci wallet, you know, but at the same
Yeah.
time, it is a premium leather product, and you're literally using it, and you're earning with it. And everybody knows, the more comfortable you feel at work, the better you're gonna work, the better you're gonna produce. Nobody, otherwise people would be wearing sandpaper on their hard hat, or rubbing their face with sand and grit on their hands. It's nobody does that because it sucks. And then work and then be in the field. It's nobody does that.
That's the thing too. I was looking it up, man, like on your Instagram page, like looking up on my phone on your Instagram. Most of your stories are shout outs of people in the field wearing a welder made headband, or, saying, hey, check this guy out, check this company out. And I think that's what's cool about you, man, is it's that word of mouth that we talked about at the beginning of the show, right?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
not spending thousands of dollars on marketing. You're just doubling down, and you're working and making it work. And it's funny how contagious it is too. When you sent me that set of headbands, and I'd given them out to one of my buddies, and then I put one on my hard hat. It's crazy. You mentioned the sandpaper fill, or always touching your face. The same kind of goes with safety glasses. If you get a pair of crappy safety glasses, you're always doing this, trying to adjust. You got gloves on, your face
yeah,
is going to get crap on it. It'll be dirty. I
yeah,
can't tell you how many times I'd be adjusting my hard hat every day,
yeah.
or tightening the back. And that's a pain. By the end of the day, your hard hat's cinched so tight that you sometimes get a headache.
Oh
And
yeah.
once I threw the set of Welder Made Headbands in, it just, like, in my head, I was like, man, I could have had this years ago. You know what I mean? And it's so cool how contagious it is, though, because everybody that wears a hard hat knows what I just talked about, like how that's a problem. And everybody in my shop, they're like, dude, what is that? What do you got wearing? How is it? How does it feel? And it's cool, man, because you don't have to do anything fancy. You just get to be yourself,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
your product speaks for itself, which is awesome.
Exactly. And that's what I hear more often than not. It's like I never want to wear my welding hood or my hard hat without having your headbands in there. And that sounds awesome, because it could be, like I just talked to my pal, Jonathan Herrera, and I think, Pearl Snap Pimps. Uh, he's got a brand that's up and coming, and we are talking some ideas, and he says, I just don't I can never go back to a regular hood without your headbands, you know. And I hear that all the time, and it sounds awesome, you know. It's great. It's a great feeling because it's it's something. Well, like for instance, the other day I put up a post and totally random, but it's what I made for breakfast, right? And my wife was there and my son and we were talking and and if I'm at home, if I didn't go to work that day, I want to make something. So this is a totally random post. It's a plate of food that I made and huevos rancheros is what it was, you know, with salsa and beans and what I really like on the side is the fried chiles de árbol and garlic. I mean, and I put that up there because, yeah, I want my page to look like I'm a human. You know, it's not all just every single day headbands, 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 or work, 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 or something like that. You know, I do really want to put a lot more posts up, and I'm really working hard on it. And I ask people, you know, send me some pictures because I want to make a post of it. But yeah, for sure, whoever tags me or mentions me, uh, I want to put that story up and running, you know. And even not, sometimes I'll go through a page real quick and I say, oh, they got, I'll fire that up on my story, you know. And it's so cool. It all comes from little life instances and at home or what I live through, like the colors, my culture, the food that I eat, you know, the time spent with my family when we go out, you know, uh, dumb little things that we used to joke around with, you know, when my brother-in-law, he recently passed away, but he was super inspiring. He was fighting cancer, uh, and he was fighting hard. He'd go to the hospital and then he got out, but the first thing he wanted to do was go back and talk to the struggling families that had kids there. And I'm like, it breaks my heart because you know it's a hard thing. And with the energy he would get together, he would go back and help. And so he was super inspiring for me growing up. My brother-in-law Tony, and we used to joke around when we were young because he didn't want to wear shorts, you know. And if they were shorts, they were cut off dicky pants or khaki pants that would hang down below the knee, right? And then they would wear tube socks, so you wouldn't really see any skin. But he goes, no, 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 nobody wants to see these Aztec warrior legs, you know. And I would laugh, you know, because that stuck in my mind, you know, Aztec warrior legs. And so, yeah, I like stuff like that. You know, I like culture, the Aztec, the tribal stuff, the Native American tribal stuff, the stories of how I love that stuff. And I want to incorporate that into my product. And I try hard. You know, we were at the fair not too long ago down in San Diego and we are looking for some hot coffee. It was getting kind of cool at night. And we looked to the side and it seems like it was meant to be. It was a sweater and it had eagles right here, but it had like a tribal print below the eagles. And I go, I have to get this tonight, you know. And I never really get that kind of stuff, but I saw that and I had to get it. And it's all the stuff is just a little bit of of my history, my life, and what I like and what I care about. And I think also what other people like, all wrapped up into a rectangle piece of leather with padding and buttons, snaps.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's cool though. Just like you're saying, man, it's like your heritage, right? And it's like the legacy goes back to the tattoo on your dad's shoulder,
yeah,
of the eagle. And it's cool that really is such a big part of your brand. It's on every headband too, right? That eagle's on every headband. I didn't see it at first on my brown set of headbands, but then like I kind of turned it a little bit into the light and I could see it just pop, and it looks really cool.
that eagle came. That eagle was the closest image that I could find because his eagle's actually turned the opposite way, but I made it so that the eagle the eagle's like it's landing. And if you notice, you know, it lands where it says welder made, but it lands over then the letters D and E. And so it's like I use it as an example, the eagle landing over the letters D and E, which is like my name, David Estrada. The 5 stars, my dad would always say, if you see 5 stars, it means it's the best. So I put the little 5 circles in a circular pattern. And of course, well, welder made is because it's the gist of it. It's the whole thing. It's I'm the welder and I'm making these things.
Man, that's
That's
cool. I didn't know that about the 5 stars. That's cool. That's special. And I hope people listen and, you know, can understand that, like the meaning behind everything that you do, which is really cool, man. I think that's the thing about passion. Everything that you do when you have a passion for something has a meaning. You talked a little bit about trying to post more, and that's tough, right? That's tough to do it, working full time as a welder and then making this stuff, making the product and then trying to post about it, man. Like social media is its own thing, but it's cool to see like the natural growth that you've had on social media, your presence on Instagram. I guess in kind of closing, man, just to kind of wrap this up and, put the bow on it, put the 5 stars on it. You have a lot of experience, in the welding industry, in the business world. You've learned a lot of lessons from your dad, super influential on you. And, I know that talking with you personally, off air.
yeah.
And what's something that you wish that you could have told yourself at 18 years old that you know now? What's something that you would tell a young kid that's 18, just starting out right now in 2023, that doesn't really know where he wants to go or is scared to be at the Bay Bridge by himself, and wants to fail his weld test? What's something that you would tell that kid?
I would first I would first tell that kid to be patient, to to make a list of things that they might want to achieve, not just now, but in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. Because more often than not, when everybody sees these pictures, with flashy trucks and beautiful equipment, just just be patient. Good things come when you wait and when you work hard for it. And you can't never get the whole meaning of something if you haven't tasted a little bit of the bad. Like if you had this rattly tatted welding hood, but that's all you had, or if you had an old pancake that belonged to somebody way back when, and the boss is jabbing you on the cheek or something like that, but that's all you got, how could you ever know how good it feels to wear something if you didn't have to wear that ugly first? And also be careful with who you spend your time with. I tell them kids, you gotta hang around people that are like minded, because um, you're about to embark on your future and it's serious. And you need to be with like minded people that are thinking the same, because just like a young man or woman that decides to go into the military, they're about to embark on something and leave their whole family behind for maybe uh, 2 or 3 years or more. Same with welding or being in whatever trade. You've got to be with somebody who's going to inspire you and help you understand, or you can ask questions or reach out, because it's not easy and it won't ever be easy and it should never be easy. It should always be somewhat of a challenge, because you should grow from it, because you have to get better. You literally have to get better at it, because it's a serious thing. Welding is a serious thing, as well as carpentry, as fitting it matters. Otherwise, they wouldn't be paying you a wage for it. So that 18-year-old person, be patient, make a list, do a little bit of research. Is this where I want to devote so much time and energy? And if it is, go full throttle on it. Go full throttle on it. Explain to the people that you care about that, hey, I'm not going to hang out at this party today because I'm going to be practicing, or I'm not going to be over there, or whatever it is. The sacrifice it takes to begin. There should be a small group that says, go for it. If you need help, just, I'm a message away, or call me. And most importantly, above all that, I believe that you got to have faith. Whatever whatever it is or drives you. Me myself, I'm saying I'm faith driven, because without faith, without that faith, I wouldn't have the possibility to think or imagine or to believe it may happen or come. And that's what faith is. You have to imagine, you have to believe, and most importantly, you have to ask for that. And so, 18-year-old person out there, just stick with it. Spend some time doing some studying, some research, hang out with like-minded people, and then when you're ready, just put the pedal to the metal.
Man, that's so awesome, man. Thank you so much. I was going to ask one question more, but you answered it. I was going to say, family is the main part of your life, and you can see that even on your Welder Made Headband on Instagram. And I was going to ask, how do you do that? Because it's tough for some blue collar guys. But for you personally, it sounds like faith is really kept you grounded to try to still include your family and spend the time with your family, man. I think that's one thing that I've noticed too from your pages and just knowing you is that's a special thing, Not everybody has that. And that's tough to do in the blue collar world sometimes, right? You're frustrated, you have a tough job, you're driving home and you're just upset at whatever happened that day. Yeah, going home and being grounded and realizing, hey, I just did all this hard stuff today for a reason, for myself, for my family, and for heritage, right? Like you're saying, and everything that you have talked about today, man, I appreciate. Where can people find out more about you, and where can people, more importantly, get your products? I know pipelinerscloud.com has some links to get these headbands. Etsy. Do you want to talk a little bit about how to get some of these products?
Yeah, sure. Other than Instagram, Etsy.com/Welder Made Headbands is my personal shop. In the future, I'll have time to, I'll have a dedicated website that's strictly Welder Made Headbands. Pipelinerscloud.com, they stock front headbands in cream, black, and brown. Of weldtube.com, they also you can find the 3-piece checkered set there, black, brown, and cream front headbands also. But I think if you even just Google Welder Made Headbands, I think it'll take you somewhere now. I think it's gotten there. So I just want to take this moment to just thank God for everything that's happened in my life this far. And other than that, you can also reach me through a message on Etsy, Etsy.com or Instagram. And I'll try my best to get to any message as quickly as possible.
Yeah. And if anybody wants to find him, Instagram, Welder Made Headbands, I'll get his links thrown up on bluecollarangst.com. So if any listeners are looking for it, they can click on the Etsy link or the Pipeliners Cloud or some of the other ones that David talked about. Just in closing, guys, I really, really appreciate David coming on from Welder Made Headbands. His life is an inspiration to me, being able to call him my friend, being able to talk to him. And I agree 100%. When he was talking about the advice on, being careful who you choose to surround yourself with, a quote came to mind that I shared on the Blue Collar Angst Instagram page. And it's by T.F. Hodge. And it just says, what surrounds us is what is within us. And that's something I wish I could have told myself too. All these little life lessons I get to learn from different blue collar giants that I get to interview. I'm very grateful for. But yeah, please check him out. Welder Made Headbands, David Estrada. You can find him on there, Google it, and go to the bluecollarangst.com website. But is there anything else you want to say, man, in closing before we wrap this up?
Sure. I really want to thank you for the opportunity to let me share my story here on Blue Collar Angst on your podcast, and I wish you the best. Like in our previous conversations offline, as fathers, as family men, we know the struggles. So I just wish wholeheartedly the best, and more than the best. All sorts of wealth that may come your way, health, friendships, finances. I truly mean that, David. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank Michael Ewing, who helped us get in contact. Michael's been awesome. And he's moving. And there's not a whole, that word I think summarizes what he's doing. Like he's moving He's getting a lot of things done for the young welders out there also, and all around awesome guy.
Yeah. And just to put a note on Mike Ewing as well with this giveaway that he's put on, and the Welder Made Headbands has contributed to as well. It's pretty cool. Not to get too personal into it, but Mike is doing this giveaway in the midst of losing his mother. His mother is he's posted a little bit about it, but his mom is about to pass away in hospice care, and just the fact for me to see him pushing the content out that he still does and the meaning behind it is genuine, guys. This high school giveaway. So please, please, please share this with your friends. Share the giveaway links. Welder Made Headbands, Blue Collar Angst. Everybody that's a sponsor on there is going to be sharing it. You can go to any one of their pages to find out more information on it. But yeah, it's just a true, genuine cause from a genuine guy. And I just really appreciate you, David. And if you guys have any questions, reach out on Spotify, drop a comment on the post announcement when the episode goes live. But keep killing it, stay safe, and we'll see you guys next week.